Everyone to this Provo Municipal Council meeting. It is Tuesday, May 3rd, 2022 at 5:33 p.m. I'm Travis Hoban, the council chair. Members of the public can view council meetings on YouTube and Facebook, or they may attend in person in the council chamber at the Provo City Center. I remind participants to mute your microphone when not speaking to minimize the potential for background noises and conversations to be picked up, recorded, and broadcast for all to hear. So today with us on the stand, we have Wayne Parker, our Chief Administrative Officer. We have council members Whipple, Ellsworth, Hanley, Shipley, Fillmore, McKay, and then we have some members of the council staff with us today as well. Wayne, I don't know if you want to take the opportunity to let everyone know where the mayor is. She usually attends these meetings every time we have them, but she's off doing something really neat today. So
she is. So the mayor is actually in Los Angeles today and tomorrow, participating in a panel with the Milken Institute, which is a nationwide, actually international research and sort of think tank group. They are the ones who designate and rank every year the best performing cities in the nation. And Provo has won that distinction 2 years running. And so she's on a panel tomorrow afternoon with the mayors of Los Angeles, Miami, Denver, and Austin, Texas, talking about the challenges facing high performing cities in the country. So as I told the council earlier, the city's punching above its weight once again, and excited about the opportunity to represent all the good things that are happening in Provo. So we asked that she be excused today. She's attending that their international global conference, which they do every year. So thank you for the opportunity to excuse her.
thank you, Wayne. Everybody can leave now. We know you're here for the mayor and she's not here, so we'll see everybody later. The opening prayer will be by invitation. Today's prayer will be provided by Quinn Peterson.
Dear Father in heaven, we're grateful to gather today and to discuss the needs of our community. We're grateful for the opportunity that we have to gather and to participate in this process. We're grateful for the health of our community and the trajectory we're on. We ask for a blessing to guide our decisions today and our comments. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Quinn. All right. The Pledge of Allegiance will be provided by Counselor George Hanley.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. John, would you be willing to go through our public comment preamble?
As indicated on the screen, a required public hearing will be held for certain agenda items prior to council action. After each such item has been presented, time to comment will be provided for all those who wish to speak. For items that do not require a public hearing, public comment will be taken following presentations of the item, but will be limited to 10 minutes. At this time, up to 15 minutes have been set aside for open public comment period, which is intended to allow comments on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Persons who speak during this time to an item that is on the agenda will not normally be afforded a second opportunity to speak during the period comment period specific to that item. During any public comment period, each speaker will generally be limited to 2 minutes. Due to notice requirements, no formal action will be taken in this meeting on matters that do not appear on the agenda. Those with comments are invited to approach the podium. Those participating on Zoom will need to use their raise hand feature to indicate they wish to comment. The chair may choose to alternate between in-person and online commenters. Please begin your comments by stating your name and city of residence. You will have 2 minutes to speak. To assist the city recorder with the minutes, we ask those commenting in person to print your name on a slip of paper provided at the back of the room and place it in the container near the podium. Online commenters should spell out their names before commenting.
In case you didn't catch that, this is your chance to stand up and get anything off your chest for 2 minutes that you wanted to talk to the council about.
I'm sorry. I didn't understand most of what you said. You're speaking way too softly. You need to eat that microphone and be a rock star.
Sorry, my voice is going right now.
So I'll set my stopwatch to keep me to my 2 minutes.
Appreciate that. Go ahead and let us know who you are and
My
where
name
you're
is
from.
Jack Pate. I'm known to at least 2 of the members here of the council. And I live here in what we call the Slate Canyon neighborhood, I guess. And I should probably get to the bottom line. When I talk to vice presidents or to judges, I tell them the bottom line first. This is a zoning issue. And I don't believe it's on the agenda. But we elect governments to preserve the rights of the citizens because citizens cannot spend all their time. I learned in a civics class years ago that citizens elect governments to watch out and protect their interest, to study the issues, to find out what the issues are, not to necessarily always poll the people, but rather learn, educate the people, and vote the people's interest. And it's a national problem, but it extends to cities as well. And so as a citizen homeowner here in an R1 area of town with a house in which I raised 8 children here that went to Provo schools, I'm seeing the house across from me at 1249 East, 700 South, 2 doors down at 1209 East, 700 South. And at the end of my street, I think it's 626, what was it? 626, I think, South Idaho Avenue, being converted by absentee landlords, investment companies out of Los Angeles into duplexes. They're gutting them and turning them into duplexes. I can't do that as a citizen, but somebody in Las Vegas is doing it. It has to stop. We have to have some zoning enforcement. Now, I'm just about out of time. So also this extends to the Slate Canyon issue. And I know Bill has a different solution than this, but zoning enforcement would probably solve that problem on Slate Canyon Drive as well.
Thank you. Appreciate your comment. Anyone else interested in sharing a comment, public comment? Let me see if we got any online here. Doesn't look like it. Okay. Well, I guess we will go ahead and close public comment then. All right, well, let's get down to business. We've got our first item of business is a public service announcement from Provo. Oh, yes. Somebody say something? No? Okay. I thought I heard something. Public service, a public service announcement for Provo School District Center for advanced professional studies on proper disposal of prescription drug medications. This is presented by Dixon Holmes, our deputy CAO, and Nathan and AJ.
Yes, Nathan and AJ will be up in a second. Just want to give a real quick overview. So the city has been working with, as you mentioned, the CAPS program, the Center for Advanced Professional Studies with the Provo School District. And it's been my honor and pleasure to work with these 2 young men this semester. And then last year, if you remember, we had a public service announcement on crosswalk safety for both pedestrians and for drivers. And so I'm going to turn it over to Nathan and AJ. They'll give a brief presentation, and then we have a video that they've helped produce.
Good evening, everyone. My name is AJ La'awanai, and my partner that I'm working with is Nathan Alvarez. We both attend Timothy High School, and we are both very thankful for this opportunity from Provo City to not only work with them, but also present our project to you guys today. We would also like to thank Dixon and Brett for their time, our chance to work with them as well. To start off this meeting, I would like to give a brief overview on what CAPS is. The Provo Center for Advanced Professional Studies, or CAPS, is a high school program that was made for us to find our passions and acquire essential professional skills at a young age. Every other school day, students from Timpview and Provo High travel to New Skin for the last 2 periods, and we all work on finding solutions to real-world problems that are given us by clients. In the program, we have multiple strands which students are allowed to take, which is business, marketing, and entrepreneurship, which me and Nathan are in, digital design and software development, engineering and industrial design, and lastly, medicine and health. Through each of these strands, students are immersed in professional culture, real-world problems, and amazing opportunities to work with clients and their local businesses. Throughout our semester, we will spend time having meetings with our clients and working with our collaborative groups to finish our projects that clients have assigned to us. And so the project that Nathan and I have been assigned to work on is a public service announcement for the proper disposal of prescription drugs. And so I'm going to turn some time over to Nathan to talk about our project.
Thank you. So before we show our final product, I wanted to give a brief explanation on the work we've done throughout this semester to help make this public service announcement for Provo City. First, I want to say we chose this project because at the beginning of the semester when they presented all the presentations, me and AJ saw a need in the community and we wanted to help. So we were asked to create a video and some infographics spreading the awareness of the proper disposal of prescription drugs. Why this is important is because we learned that disposing of them improperly can lead to them harming our environment. We will see in the video that is taught that prescription drugs, it used to be taught that you should just flush them down the toilet. But newer studies have shown that that is harmful and can get into our lakes and other bodies of water and harm some of the life there. This was a great opportunity for us to work with Provo City. We learned a lot making the videos, writing out the scripts, and doing the research. Again, we'd just like to thank Provo City for letting us help them with this project. And that's it.
For generations, it was taught that you can dispose of your prescription drugs. A study shows that in freshwater habitats where drug residue is most commonly found, 75% of fish/amphibians are lost. The proper way to dispose of prescription drugs is to drop them off at a prescription drug drop-off box. You can drop them off at any of these 5 locations in Provo: Mountainland Health Center, Provo Police Department, Timpview Pharmacy Intermountain, Walgreens, or CVS. Keep our environment healthy by disposing your drugs properly.
As you can see, they did an excellent job, and we'll continue to use this video on our own networks and social media feeds to continue to promote the safe disposal of prescription drugs. Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you to the Provo School District for their participation, and we'll look forward to future presentations.
Nathan, AJ, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. Any questions or comments from the council?
I just want to thank you guys for doing that. And it's well done, but it's an important message, and hopefully it'll get some publicity. Thank you so much for caring.
I was introduced through this we did the last one with the sidewalks, and now this one. I think it's awesome. My son just came home and told me that he got in it for next year. So I'm really excited. I didn't even know that he was applying, but he was looking forward to it. So I think it's a great program that the schools are doing.
Thank you. Appreciate you all being here today. Great presentation. Good job. We're also going to now move on to recognizing our Provology participants. Dixon, you're back up. Dixon Holmes, Deputy CAO.
Okay, Council, it's been my privilege and opportunity to be the Provology Coordinator for Provo City. And we are actually just finishing our 10th graduating class. So it's pretty exciting. COVID knocked us out for a little bit, but we're back at it. And this evening, we would like to recognize our participants and graduates. And I will just read what this what our certificate says. It says, the Regents of Provology, on the nomination of the Graduate Council of the City of Provo, having demonstrated ability by collaborative participation in Provo City and its many functions, award the degree of PhD, Provo honorary degree, with all of the rights and privileges thereto pertaining, given at Provo City Center this 10th graduating class 2022, signed by Mayor Kafusi and Wayne Parker. Just really quickly, for the public's benefit, Provology is a citizens academy to help our residents and some business owners to understand more about what happens at Provo City as far as an organization and local government. Our participants have had the opportunity to tour the new airport terminal. They were able to experience the inside of a 5 million gallon water tank that was empty. They were able to tour the new sewer treatment plant that is under construction down at Public Works. They heard from the fire department, the police department, the mayor's office, the council office. Councilmember Hanley was there to share with them. They've taken a tour of the library, the Covey Center, and heard from most of the various divisions and departments here at Provo City. And so without further ado, what I'd like to do is read their names, have them come up and receive their, and not everyone's going to be here tonight. Some had prior commitments out of the country. Their certificate, and then if we could, maybe a photo op with the council and our participants, if that would be okay. Excellent. Okay.
Really?
So if we could just, if you come up by order then as I read your name. Sue Bandley. Ahmed Banya. Jennifer and Brian Beaumont. Kathy Carla, I don't think Kathy was going to make it. Suzanne Cutler. And Jeff Cutler. I think Jesse Embry was going to be here with us this evening. Cynthia and Randy Lewis, I think, are also out of town. Oh, very good. That's right. Let me give you Randy's. Paul Nelson. Julie Red. Stephen Schertz, and I think Stephen's out of town. America Semler. Connie Summers. Belva Wood. Muazula. And her daughter, Katya Musoni, who is our youngest participant in Provology, and she did an awesome job. So council, if you could come join us, and if we could just kind of squeeze in here on the steps, I'll take a picture. Yeah, it's okay. In the witness protection program. Okay. 1, 2, 3. All right. Thank you so much.
Awesome job.
Thank you, council. We'll go ahead and dismiss ourselves. I think your audience now is going to be a little smaller.
Did Dixon leave? Good, good, good. Hey, Wayne Parker. All right. Our next item is an applied motion on a resolution consenting to the appointment of individuals to various boards and commissions presented by Wayne Parker. And Wayne, I actually have a question for you. How do most people find out about Provology?
Word of mouth is really important. We have an active Facebook group of Provology alumni who share the message. We do a lot of social media outreach, and we typically do a fall and a spring cohort. So we'll let people get through the summer this year, and we'll start another one in late August when kind of kids are back in school and families are home. But we try to put an announcement out a month or so in advance of the first class, and we have an application form. People can sign up. We try to pick a representative group if we have more than we have space for, typically about 15 to 20 participants. And so again, we try to spread it out so it's a nice cross section of Provo, so we've I think this 10th class represents about now, not quite 200, but probably pretty close to 200 alumni now of the Provology program.
It's really neat. All right, we'll let you get to the item at hand.
Very good. Well, thank you for the opportunity. Our nomination for board and commission appointment tonight is for Melissa Kendall, who has been a neighborhood chair in the Wasatch neighborhood. Before, I've been very active in local and community affairs, is a pediatrician, owner of a pediatric clinic, and we're recommending her for an appointment to the Planning Commission. So with that, be happy to answer any questions you might have. But Melissa's been a longstanding, very important part of our community. So happy to respond to any questions you might have.
Brian, do we open this up for public comment?
We do not normally do that for appointment.
All right, questions or comments from the council? Okay. This time we will call for a vote on the implied motion. We'll make this a roll call vote. I, Chair Hoban, will vote yes. Vice Chair Hanley?
Yes.
Councilor Ellsworth?
Yes.
Councilor Fillmore?
Yes.
Councilor Whipple?
Yes.
Councilor Shipley?
Yes.
Councilor McKay?
Yes.
All right, that is unanimous. Okay, we now have an implied motion on a resolution appointing an individual to the Metropolitan Water Board, presented by Brian Jones, City Attorney.
Thank you, Chair Hoban. As the council is aware, since we went through this just a few weeks ago, there exists an entity called the Metropolitan Water District, that is the Provo Metropolitan Water District, that is a separate entity from the city. It's a separate legal entity created by the state, but the state delegates to the city council the authority to appoint the members of the board of trustees of that organization. They have a vacancy, and applications were opened up under the provisions in state law. Applications were submitted, and it's now before the council to consider a motion to appoint someone to that board.
Okay. So I guess nobody was
The
prepared.
sidelong glances and there were more than one applicant. There was more than one applicant, but my understanding was that the council had selected someone. But
Okay.
I think we were waiting for leadership to announce who that
Okay.
was.
And the wording is what exactly? That we are nominating, we are approving, we are,
Well, I think if you tell us the name, Malia will type it into the resolution and then you just vote on the implied
so
motion to approve
the name is
resolution.
Cindy Richards.
Okay.
We spoke as a individually about her application, and that's where we are at.
So we need a second on that motion.
Well, you have an implied motion to
Implied
appoint.
motion, my bad.
And we just needed to fill the name into the resolution. So
Okay.
Malia's doing that right now. And as soon as that's done, then you can just vote on that implied motion.
Okay. Okay, we will now call for a vote on the implied motion regarding a resolution appointing Cindy Richards to the Board of the Metropolitan Water District of Provo. Vice Chair Hanley,
Yes.
Counselor Ellsworth,
Yes.
Counselor Fillmore,
Yes.
Counselor Whipple,
Yes.
Counselor Shipley,
Yes.
Counselor McKay,
Yes.
and I, Chair Hoban, will vote yes. Thank you.
Chair, may I say something? I just wanted to express my gratitude that we had really great applicants for this position. And I am so thankful that people are willing to put their name in the hat to serve in these boards. And I would love for people to continue to do that, even when it's not possible for us to appoint everyone.
Thank you. Next item is an implied motion on an ordinance amending Provo City Code regarding the combination of the development services and community and neighborhood services departments. Citywide application presented by Melissa McNally, planner.
Hey, good evening, council. Just to give you a little bit of history, because some of you council members are new and may not know, a few years ago, our administration decided they wanted to streamline the process for development in Provo and really work on delivering some stellar customer service. And so they combined a few departments into development services and community and neighborhood services. So had been working that way for a few years and really working on delivering that good customer service. I feel like we've come a long way. We still have work to do. But the summer of last year, we began working as a single department. And at the end of last year, administration made the decision to combine those two departments back into one under the development services umbrella. So we've been functioning that way since the end of 2021, and it's been going really well. I feel like it's done a lot to eliminate confusion. I think with the public, there was some confusion as far as to which department did what. So now we're under development services, all of us, and we just need to change the code to reflect that and eliminate community and neighborhood services so that it just reflects development services.
Sounds simple enough. Any questions by the council? Councilor Ellsworth.
I think there was a similar item to this a couple months ago. And I don't know if it was exactly this. I can't remember what, but we were changing changing language per this like consolidation. Do you remember what the other item was? Or just staff? Oh, was it in our budget discussion? Okay. Okay. All right. So it wasn't here. All right. Thanks.
Any additional questions? Okay. We do open this item up for public comment, so we will do that at this time. Anyone in the room or online is free to make a 2-minute comment on this item. Okay. If you're online and hoping to comment on this, you need to let us know. All right. We'll go ahead and close public comment. And we'll bring it back to the council for any discussion. No discussion? Okay. Then we'll go ahead and call for a vote on the implied motion. Counselor Ellsworth,
Yes.
Counselor Fillmore,
Yes.
Counselor Whipple,
Yes.
Counselor Shipley,
Yes.
Counselor McKay.
Yes.
I, Chair Hoban, will vote yes. Vice Chair Hanley?
Yes.
That is unanimous. Okay. Next item is an ordinance amending the zone map classification of approximately 0.26 acres of real property generally located at 1545 North Canyon Road from residential conservation to the general commercial. This has implications for the Carterville neighborhood. And this will be presented by Aaron Ardmore, planner.
All right. And I'll take the place for Aaron.
Okay.
That's right. He couldn't be here today, so I'm Dustin Wright with Development Services. And yeah, so this property is the Dairy Queen property adjacent to BYU here on Canyon Road. The applicant is requesting a zone change. So currently it's a commercial use restaurant, but it's in a residential zone. And so for them to be able to do things on the property, like make some updates and things like that, they wouldn't be able to do that under the current zoning that they're in. So they're requesting this zone change to the CG, the general commercial zone, so that they can do these improvements to the property. The rezone would bring the property more into compliance with the general plan. So the general plan designation is commercial, not residential for this property. So bring an alignment there, and it would afford the property owner the opportunity to make those improvements to their property. So those are some benefits from rezoning the property. The Planning Commission heard this item, and they've provided a positive recommendation to approve the rezone request. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions from the council? Counselor McKay?
Are we addressing the sign now or just the rezone? Because the rezone allows the sign, correct?
Yeah, so the reason they're doing it is because they're looking to do some sign upgrades on their property, but the request is to change the zone.
Okay.
So the signage would all be reviewed later through the city.
Oh, okay, so we don't need to worry about the sign at all right now?
No, the sign's the reason why they're doing it, but it's not part of the rezone.
But giving them the rezone less allows them the sign.
I was going to say, it depends on what you mean by not concerned about it. This is your only chance to be concerned
okay.
about it. So,
Excellent.
so what you need to be, what the council needs to think about is granting the rezone will allow them to put in any sign that the zone allows. And that review would be done administratively and would not come back to the council.
Okay.
So if you're concerned about the sign that the zoning allows, then you should be concerned with the rezone.
Okay. Well, first of all, I love Dairy Queen, and their cotton candy blizzard is one of my favorite things on earth. But I'm just worried about the sign at night, like because there's a lot of there's just a lot of apartments around there and the hotel and stuff. Now, the owner mentioned, I watched the Planning Commission, that it goes into snow mode or something at night. I'm just wondering if there's a significantly less bright thing that happens at night, or if that gets tested by the city, the signage, once it's up to make sure, I don't know. I'm just curious about that.
Oh man, do I know more about signs than I want to. So this sign would have to follow current city ordinance.
Correct.
Okay. Do you want to answer the question then? Might as
I
well.
don't have the specifics on the lumens and things that they're planning to do, but yeah, you're right. They would have to meet the code that the city council has put in place not too long ago. So as far as how often the sign can change copy, how bright it can be, all of those things are already addressed in the code. So when they do submit those, that's what we're reviewing it to make sure that they're in conformance with that. If there's any violations of that, then our code compliance would have to investigate any of those issues like any other sign in the city.
So, basically depends on where the street is located. That determines, first of all, well, yeah, how often it can rotate, and then also how bright it can be during the day and at night. I'm trying to recall exactly what we passed, but basically we had a sign committee the last couple of
I
years
remember.
who reviewed all our sign ordinances and helped determine where it made sense to allow frequent rotation as opposed to like non-frequent rotation and how bright it could be at night.
Can the owner respond real quick? Does he have time?
so-
Does he just get afterwards?
Let's finish questions for Aaron. Any additional for Aaron? Or Dustin, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I had Aaron in my head from the paper.
I think on this location, it's a 1 hour turn on the sign. So it wouldn't be the kind that's updating every few seconds.
And that would be because it's adjacent to residential essentially, right?
I think
or
it's
closer.
the location, I believe, the type of zone.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Any additional questions? Okay, so did you want to make a comment? Catrice McKay kind of voluntold you to make a comment.
Yes, I'm the operation manager for Dairy Queen.
And what's your name?
Roger
Roger.
Lunardelli.
We'll ask you to spell that out later, but
Okay.
because we got to put it in the record. So
That's fine. Well, the sign will only be on during operation hours at nighttime. So from 6 p.m., basically when it starts to getting dark, and it will be off up after 10 p.m. when we close the business. So that's the only time that the sign will be on. And then Sundays will be off all day long because we don't open on Sundays.
that's great. Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate that response. All right. We'll go ahead and I guess we got to open this up for public comment. So we'll do that at this time. Step right up. Let us know who you are, even though we already know, but we got to know again.
Okay, this is Jack Pate, Provo, Utah. I didn't come to talk about this subject, but I have questions that I think you ought to be asking, and those are exactly what kind of a sign is this going to look like? Because right now you've discussed the code, but when you say general commercial to me, I think downtown Provo. And if that's the limit on that neighborhood, I think you still need some more questions about what kind of a sign does that allow? Not saying that it shouldn't be done, but what I'm saying is what I've seen on University Avenue, I do not think that that fits on, what was it, Rock Canyon or whatever they call that road? Canyon Road. Yeah. So I don't think you've got all your questions answered here that you need to be asking for that particular neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. So again, just the ordinance, we evaluated where certain signage was appropriate or not. And also the size of the sign is limited based on frontage or, yeah, I can't remember exactly, Brian, but it's limited. You know, you can't have a huge sign for a small property or whatever. And then it sounds like it was a 1 hour rotation, 1 hour churn. So there wouldn't be that like strobe effect that you get with some of the signage. So in general, we feel like we have pretty good handle on, you know, you can't limit you can't totally eliminate signs. So the idea is try to make it reasonable given the situation. So there, yeah.
Wasn't clear to me what general commercial signage limitations are.
Right. Yeah.
Councilor Hoban.
Go ahead.
Yeah, if I could just weigh in, it's probably helpful for the public to understand that in addition to our regular zoning rules, we also have basically what I would call an overlay zone for digital signs. So the underlying zone doesn't determine everything to do with the sign. The underlying zone determines the size of the sign, but then the city is divided up into 3 lighting zones, LZ1, LZ2, LZ3, and this would be in the LZ2 lighting zone, which only allows the sign to change once an hour. And then, as was mentioned previously, there are brightness standards that have to be followed both during the day and nighttime.
That's the administrative, where these people won't see it yet, but the administrative people would.
Correct.
Okay, that's good clarification. Thank you.
All right. Any additional public comment? Okay, we'll close public comment. We'll bring this back to the council for discussion. Go ahead, Councilor Whipple.
So I ride by this site almost every day on my bike commute home from work. And I'm just really excited to see your progress that you've been making on the building. I see your big public notice sign out front. And I was really surprised to learn that this was an RC zone. That seems to be completely inappropriate for the structure that we have there right now. And I'm just really delighted to see a business owner taking care of their business, investing in it, and adding to the community.
Thank you. Any additional comments? All right, then we will go ahead and call for a vote on the implied motion. Councilor Fillmore?
Yes.
Councilor Whipple?
Yes.
Councilor Shipley?
Yes.
Councilor McKay?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Chair Hoban, Vice Chair Hanley?
Yes.
Councilor Ellsworth?
Yes.
That is unanimous. Thank you. All right, our next item is a presentation on the proposed tentative budget for Provo City for fiscal year 2022. This will be presented by John Borgett, Director of Administrative Services. John, step right up.
Mr. Chairman, we're going to show a little introductory video first from the mayor, who would tell you what she would be telling you if she was sitting here. And then we'll turn to John Borgett to fill in some of the blanks, and then we're happy to answer questions.
You all know well that I am serving as mayor. I dedicate most of my waking moments to this important work. I treasure it and know it won't last forever. I'm often up past midnight checking emails or texts, and then up again at 4:30 in the morning to get in a quick run before I get back at it. What you may not know is that I still have kids at home and that I'm out grocery shopping every week to keep everyone fed. Like the rest of you shoppers, I've had my jaw hit the floor more than a few times this last year, and don't even get me started on gas prices. It's well known that we are seeing the highest inflation in many Provo residents' lifetimes. One of the things I believe strongly in is taking good care of Provo City employees. This is for two main reasons. One is a concern for them. I grew up poor and don't want this time to be harder on their families than it has to be. But I also have an overall concern for Provo City as an organization. These days, finding and keeping good employees seems to be harder than ever. Even fast food places are paying more than some of our important entry-level positions. If we ever reach a situation where Provo City can't keep well-qualified employees, the organization will suffer. And in the end, so will we as Provo residents. I believe Provo residents deserve a city organization that is staffed by top personnel, ones who can help lift Provo to the next level. We've got that kind of team, so let's keep it. With the retention and recruitment of quality employees as a top priority, my proposed budget not only maintains the robust package of benefits our employees already enjoy, but also adds a historic 5% cost of living adjustment. My hope is that my team members in the Provo City organization receive this in the spirit it is offered, as a token of my genuine regard for them. If approved, every full-time member of the organization will enjoy this little boost to help them through this time of historic inflation. Another highlight from the budget is funding 2 new police positions, a sergeant and an officer, both of whom will primarily serve at our new Provo Airport Terminal. Public safety continues to be a shared top priority. I'll now turn the time over to my team to present the rest of the budget. But thank you for allowing me to share 2 of its biggest highlights. I look forward to continue engaging with you on the important work of the Provo City budget.
It's like she's right here with us.
Well, Chair Hoban and the Honorable Council, it's a pleasure to be with you to present and discuss the tentative budget for fiscal year 2023, which starts January 1st of 2022. Just want to make a couple of notes before I start going through it. Want to mention this is, as each of you are aware, but some of our residents may not know what a huge effort this is. It starts in January and just takes many hours. I want to give a special thanks to Kelsey Zarbach, who's in the here with us today. She's our budget officer and has led the effort and has just done an amazing job. Also, Crystal Howarth is our budget analyst who does a lot of the work behind the scenes, and just want to give a special thanks to them. Also want to give a special thanks to administration for their all the efforts and their leading this budget process. It does affect many. Each of the directors, we work closely with them, as well as many employees throughout the city. So I just want to give them a special thanks. If you want to turn to the next page, I don't know if you can read that very well. I may need to get that's better, much better. I would just mention that if you scroll down to the bottom, this proposed budget is a total of $384,034,699. If you can see next to that, to the left, is what last year's budget was, which was $304,140,334. So it's an increase of almost $81 million. And I want to just kind of give you a high level overview of why that increased that much from the prior year. If you scroll up towards the top, you can see three areas that are things that are going on that are big impacts in this upcoming year. Number one is at the airport. There's a plan to construct a new snow removal building and also some equipment within that building so that we can service commercial flights and the scheduled service that comes through the airport. And there's also some runway improvements that are going to be taking place there, and those total $22 million. The next item that's highlighted is our wastewater treatment plant. We were working on construction of the treatment plant last year as well, but this year we plan to expend more money as we get more and more deeply into the process. And so that's there. And then also there is a budget for a start and of a water treatment plant. And so those three items total $73,708,000. And so pretty much represent the lion's share of the increase. Up at the top, though, you can see that the general fund increased by approximately $6 million. And if we scroll to the next page, there is a summary of where the increases and a little bit about the general fund. And so we're going to talk first of all about revenues in the general fund. Big thing. Sales tax is the largest source of revenue for the city. And I would just mention that currently in this year, we have received 8 months of the 12, and we are currently trending 15.13% over our prior year. And our budget numbers are about the same. And so our budget is pretty close to what it was the prior year. What we are forecasting and projecting this year is that we will continue that trend. By the way, we just got February about a week ago, and sales tax was strong again. It's the state of Utah's economy continues to be resilient. We are concerned that things could change as we see the impacts of inflation and the potential impacts of the economy. But I would just mention that so far this year, we continue to see a strong trend. So what we have forecasted, similar to what we did last year on the budget, is that we'll continue that trend through the next 4 months. And then in the next year, it will drop to 5% rather than 15%. And that's where we have made our projection. And so just to give you aware of it, we'll be more than happy to have more in-depth discussions as we get into the budget with each of the council members, and I'm happy to answer any questions. But and actually it's not quite 5%, it's 4.53% that we're projecting as an increase on top of what we're projecting for this year, for the new year. You can also see where our fees are projected to go up 980,000. I would mention that 535,000 of that 980 is parks, and specifically the rec center and other areas. They continue to have strong revenues and be very successful there. And then also down below, you can see that we've got lodging and other taxes are going up about 428. Of that, 170 is lodging. We are seeing, as we've come out of the pandemic, our lodging and motel tax for the city is increasing and getting back to where it was before, which is a real positive sign. So in total, the projected increase in revenues is about 7 million. And then listed down in the expenditure, if you scroll down, we talked about a $6 million increase on the previous page. One real big piece of that is the police of roughly about 2.5 million. 1.5 million of that came from an adjustment to police compensation last December. And we made a mid-year appropriation, but we're comparing last year's budget to start with this year's budget. And so about $1.5 million is represented there. I would also just let you know that as far as the total impacts for a 5% COLA for the general fund, that is $2.2 million. And so it's a significant amount of money. Citywide is about 3.1 million. And so as you look at that 2.1 million, and then you look at the increase in police compensation, the primary increases over the prior year are those two things. There are some other impacts to the new city hall. The new city hall is going to be efficient and provide many benefits, but it is a much larger facility. And so it will cost more to clean the windows, to do just overall elevator maintenance and different things like that. And so, but those have been included in the budget, but they do increase some of the costs. And so just make you aware of that. Okay, if we scroll to the next page and we keep going, we want to talk a little bit about our budget highlights document. And what it is just a kind of a summary from me to the council to just kind of talk about some of the significant items, not everything, but some of the things that are key highlights. And what I would recommend residents as well as the council to take time to read through this. We're going to just focus on some of the highlights of the highlights. You like that? And so if we could scroll to the next page, should be highlighted. So there are some recommended utility rate increases, 2% average increase in energy, which is the first time in a number of years that there's an increase there, but they're being impacted by the increase from inflation for operating expenses and other areas. And so they're recommending a 2% increase. This is our final year for wastewater on a 5-year plan as far as their increases in fees to help provide funds for infrastructure and the treatment plant. And so there's a 9% increase there with an average of $685 per average residential home. And then for water, it's a 5% or a $250 increase. And so those are the three areas and utilities that we're recommending to increase. We scroll down, and this table or graph right here just kind of shows where Provo sits amongst these other comparable cities. And you can see that we're third. But I would just mention that we are towards the top, but one of the reasons is because we are addressing critical infrastructure and things that need to be in place so that we can provide residents with reliable service and also make sure that our facilities are efficient and environmentally sound. And so I would say those are important things.
John, we got a quick question from Councilor Hanley.
Yes.
So in the past, sometimes when you've showed where Provo is with an increase, that doesn't necessarily indicate potential increases in other cities. Is that the case here?
That's a good point. That is the case.
Okay,
Yes,
so
that's just as of how they are right now. And so after they potentially do adjustments, that would impact this
okay.
slide. And that's
Okay.
correct, isn't it, Kelsey? Kelsey updated the slide and worked with the department. So yeah, that's just as it is right now. But that does that have our increase or not? So it does have our increase, but not others, because we don't know for sure what they're going to do.
Thank you.
Okay, good question. Okay, scroll down a little bit as far as funded personnel costs. As was mentioned by the mayor, this includes a 5% COLA. It does provide merit increases for most employees that are eligible. There are some that are topped out, but large, high percentage would also get a 2.5% merit increase. Does show a health insurance increase of 0.1%. That's a little bit lower than normal, but we just follow the Millman Index. And there was some interesting impacts from the pandemic on medical. And so that's a little lower, but we just stay consistent with where we've been. We also, Daniel Softly has done and looked at market study increases, and we plan on doing those. It's been a big effort to be competitive. We've had several situations this past year where you're aware of police. We had some area with our planners. We had with facilities. As we've encountered difficulties in recruiting, or if we've become aware of areas where we've been out of line, we've tried to be proactive so that we can retain our talent. And this career series, this market study was very in depth, and we feel like it's helping us to be competitive and fair. We also continue to offer the sick leave buyout, of course, our Utah retirement benefit, our employee appreciation and recognition, this budget in each of the departments, as well as our birth, parent, and adoption leave. We scroll down a little bit more. Supplemental requests. This year is not like any other year. We had a large number of supplemental requests. We had 73, totaling almost 4 million. And we are recommending funding about $1,969,440. I would just mention that our first priority in this budget, as was mentioned by the mayor and Wayne, was the employees. And so we would love to have funded more, but just felt like the need for keeping our talent and addressing inflation was important. The two positions that the mayor mentioned, an airport sergeant, as well as an officer, and vehicles and equipment to be stationed at the airport, that represents $432,950. As was presented in an earlier budget meeting with information systems, we are recommending a backup archival system that will help protect the city from cyber threats and ransomware events by having a longer period of time of keeping backups. It was limited to 90 days, but with this recommendation, it would give us a much longer period of time. And I think Josh even mentioned pretty much indefinite. And one of the concerns is that a lot of times you may not be aware that you've been hacked for some period of time. And if it was beyond 90 days, it would put us in a difficult position. Also, it was discussed with the council earlier about a security operations center. And what it basically does is it provides a managed system that's outsourced, that goes in, detects, analyzes, and responds to cyber threats, provides us information, provides us feedback on where we can improve our systems and do things. And if there are any events that have any attempts or threats that we provide, we're given that information and we're able to benefit from that. And was mentioned earlier, we actually have been utilizing this service on a trial basis, and we're on a month-to-month service. Once we've realized the benefits of it, we wanted to take advantage of it. And so we recommend, the recommendation to a supplemental request was to fund this in upcoming years. And that's what that is. You scroll down in development services, we're recommending $11,000 for Granicus subscription renewal. We're also recommending a $25,000 increase in the city match to downtown Provo Inc., which was presented to the council earlier as well.
In Parks and Rec, there's a need
John.
for, yes,
Sorry to interrupt. We got a question from
Okay.
Councilor McKay.
you bet.
$25,000 increase for the city match. What is it currently?
Is it-
You know?
Wayne, you sure?
It's 75,000. Yeah, so we
Okay,
moved
so
from
it'd go up to
75
100.
to 100, correct. And again, we used to do it at 100 level and reduced it
Okay.
pre-pandemic. And so this is kind of a restoration of that.
Gotcha. Thank you for that.
Yeah, thanks. And feel free to stop me anytime. So I appreciate that. So we do have a, yes, Councilor Whipple.
I'm sorry. I don't remember what Granicus is.
Granicus is the software we use to track short-term rentals. And so it essentially scours the internet and defines where people are advertising short-term rentals. We can't use that as evidence in all alone in terms of enforcement on short-term rentals prohibited by the state legislature, but we can use it as indicators and we can use it to monitor what's happening. And if we see evidence at that location of an existing short-term rental, we can then enforce on it. So it's a data gathering tool that we and many other cities use.
Do we get to charge our lodging tax on the short-term rentals?
That, they are illegal in in most residential zones. Yeah. That's a really good question. I have not asked that question before, so we'll find out for you.
I believe we do. That's what I've heard, but.
Yeah, we'll double check that and find out.
Okay.
Yep.
Additional questions? Okay.
Any more questions? Okay, great. So there is a full-time technical position that's in the Covey Center that's been needed. We talked specifically to Scott Henderson and he let us know how important this need was. And they have other needs too. And he felt like this was their most important need. And so we're recommending that be funded. In Public Works, a full-time fleet technician to assist in adequately maintaining the fleet. They continue to just have lots of pressure on their fleet repairmen. And so they're recommending we fund that, as well as a public relations information employee as far as their correspondence, particularly with the new airport terminal and all the different things going on with Public Works. There's a real need to have a public relations person to work closely with Nicole and to work directly with the public. Also recommending a full-time sanitation worker based on increased demand for garbage pickup. Can you scroll down a little bit, please? And then 3 additional part-time reclamation positions are recommended to be funded. Other items, funded items of note, in preparation for the new airport terminal opening and an increase in scheduled commercial flights, and to meet the FAA standards of our airport certification, the following are included in the proposed budget. 6 additional full-time positions. I already talked about the first 2, the police officers, also an airport division director, an airport maintenance manager, an airport document manager, and an airport security manager. And then an additional part-time position being an airport wildlife biologist. And then I didn't highlight this, but I think it's worth noting, the airport terminal. Yes.
Sorry, just scroll up a little bit. The 60,000 for 3 additional part-time reclamation positions, is that 60,000 total or 60,000 per position?
No, it's total. That's good. That probably could be worded better, but yes, that's
okay. It
that's
just
total.
is very part-time. Yeah.
Yeah, it's 20,000 each. So yes. Okay. Thanks for.
If I could ask another question too. So we got a number for the police officer and the police sergeant, but the division director, the number, those 4 positions there with the airport, do we have a number?
We can provide that to you. I didn't include that in the budget highlights, but definitely we can provide that. And
I mean, it just seems like that's a big chunk, right? I mean, we're talking about full benefits paid
Yeah.
positions, full-time
Yeah,
positions.
and I've listed the amounts for the supplemental requests, but for these other funding items, not, but we can
Okay.
definitely provide that. And
Okay.
this- I do show down below the overall impact in total. In the airport terminal, their operating budget, which it's kind of it's a brand new function that we've created within the airport. We provided a $441,000 operating budget, and then overall operating expenses increased 1.5 million, which includes wages and all expenses. But we'd be happy to provide you a breakdown of what each of those positions cost.
John, I got a question. So the PIO officer, that's a little bit up, is,
Yes.
You mentioned, due to the airport and such. I'm just curious, pardon my ignorance, what do they do for public works as far as public relations? I mean, you mentioned airport, but what else would they do?
And I don't know, is Dave here?
Well, yeah, Dave's here, but let me highlight just a couple of things that, and again, there are areas where we have seen a critical need. So these are the folks that would also reach out to neighborhoods when we're getting ready to do the street overlay and produce the doorknob hangers and things to let people know kind of what the scheduling is going to be. It's interacting on social media when we get questions about, garbage collection or whatever. The CIP reports that you get every month is currently done by an intern. That's the turnover there has created some real problems for us. And so the reports that we send out to the public and to the council, talking about what's going on in public works, letting people know the status of capital improvement projects. Is that fair, Dave? Anything you'd add to that? But it's really the public interface from the Public Works Department to our residents.
They've had a part-time position that's been doing that. Is that correct, Dave?
Yeah.
And it's
been
just, the bandwidth just doesn't seem to be there to get it done.
Like a half FTE?
It's
Yeah.
probably less than that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. If we could scroll down a little bit more, it's on the next page. One of the things I wanted to mention that I think most of you are aware of, but I'll just kind of give a little background. We have been for a number of years setting aside money for our facilities and particularly systems within our facility so that when something breaks down, or if there's a major problem, that we've got money set aside that we roll over from year to year to be able to adequately replace that or repair it. We've had situations where we've had garage doors that have gone down. Sometimes you can run into different various expenses. So we've consistently done that. But this year with the expected completion of the airport terminal and the new city hall, we had Dick Blackham go in and identify all the systems in place that are going into those two new facilities. And then what we do is we actually set up a kind of a useful life on those assets and then divide that by the useful life and set aside those funds. And so included in the budget for those two new facilities, as well as all other general fund facilities, we're setting aside that money. And so just want to make you aware of that and let you know that that's included in the budget that's been delivered. Okay, if we scroll down just a little bit farther, I would just mention that we appreciate the council for considering this budget. But the finance staff, myself, and Kelsey and Crystal would be happy to help in any way we can, as well as administration. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I would mention one other thing too, that this budget is now out on the website. We put it up just before this meeting. If you go into provo.org and go into finance and then reports and budget documents, and then you click budget, and under budget, you'll see the 2023 tentative budget.
Elizabeth just sent us a link on email. So,
okay, great. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Councilor Fillmore.
John, just summarize for me, if you would, where the 80 million budget increase is coming from.
Okay, it was primarily in three areas.
I saw sales tax about 6 million, fees 2.5 million. Where's the rest coming from?
Okay, it came from
the airport, and that we're doing some runway improvements. I think that's about 11 million. And then we had the
No. I mean, where's the revenue coming to meet that 80 million increase in the budget?
okay, I can explain that. For the improvements for the airport grants, okay, they've got they've actually got some CARES Act money as well as some ARPA money that's directly for the airport.
Do you know how much that is? I'm just going to keep talking.
And with the 11 million that we get from for the runway improvements, we get that through FAA. There is a city match portion, but the lion's share of it comes from grants.
Okay.
Okay. And then the wastewater treatment plant, the lion's share of that money is coming from two places. One, the bond that's been issued, and the council has also recently approved another increment of money that came in, as well as some money that doesn't have to be paid back.
How much is that total, those two items?
As far as there's with the wastewater, there's a component, because some of the money we self-fund as well, and then some of it comes from the bonds, okay? And so what I would probably recommend, I can provide you a breakdown. Off the top of my head, I can't, but I can tell you that the bulk of that is coming from the bonds that have been issued through the state, the 0.5% bonds.
Was that 10 or 11 million?
10 or 11 million, but we're still spending part of the 77 million that we originally got. So we've got that as well as the additional 10, because we're still in the construction process.
Okay.
And then the other portion is the water treatment plant. And that item is we're looking at options. One of the things that the administration's been looking at, and I know Dave Decker's mentioned it multiple times, is the idea of using some of the ARPA funds for that. You know, we've got a couple different tranches. We've got the 23 million that has to meet the requirements of whether it's, for various projects that qualify. And then we've got the 10 million that's sales revenue lost. That's just a standard amount. This is part of the 23 million. And the hope is that we would use a significant portion of that to construct the water treatment plant. But if for some reason that funding did not come in, then it wouldn't happen. But the way that the budget's been established is we're hoping and planning that it will. And so we've put the grant revenue in the budget, and then we've also put the capital expenditure in the budget. But unless we had a clear source, we wouldn't actually start that. Does that help?
Well, it does. Thanks.
Okay.
You're always very helpful. Let me rephrase it. So we've got about an $80 million increase in our budget.
Yep.
And so as we list the various sources to catch up that 80 million, the one concern I think the council has is if you take all the grants, the additional revenue and whatever else, what is your projection as to how much, in order to meet that 80 million increase number, how big a bite do we have to take out of ARPA to get there? How much money from ARPA will we have left over for some other things?
Well, out of the 80 million that we're talking right now, there's one small piece, okay? We have some positions that were eliminated during COVID, and in the 2022 budget, they qualify for ARPA, and it was about $500,000 in 2022. Well, in the 23, those funds qualify until 2024. And so in 2023, we did include about I think it's about 450,000 paying for those positions as well. So there's that piece right there. And then the other piece would just be the water treatment plant. And what we would need is probably a large portion of that 23 million, which right now is about 22 with what I just mentioned. A large portion of that would need to come in order for that to happen. Or we may also find, and I know Dave and the administration has been looking at other sources of funding that we could potentially find to make that happen. But the bottom line is it's all conditional. You know, if those funds don't come forward, then that project is on hold.
Yeah, so I guess, you know, we're in the throes of the budget, right? And so the more information you can give us, the better in terms of those sources of revenue, sources of grants, funds, bond money, whatever. And so we can, and conditional and otherwise, so we can get a better handle on those ARPA funds and
Yeah.
might be available otherwise.
The big pieces, the two of the big pieces though, the airport's not planning on those ARPA funds that we're talking about. And wastewater, there may be a need to use some of those. I don't know, Dave, there's a hope that we can use 3 million to finish the wastewater treatment plant. And that was kind of conditional when we got the additional 10 million plus the, was it non-forgivable, was it 5? Of 5. They want us to make sure that we're able to pay. And so there's about 3 million there. But I think this is a great topic of something that we'll want to sit down with the council in a work session or in a meeting sometime between now and when the budget's adopted. So we could give you, maybe pull it up on a screen and give you kind of the details so that the council can be aware of that.
I was going to ask you for that, or maybe a memo sooner rather than later in terms of your various revenue sources and what's conditional and what's firm, and
We can do that.
measure that against the ARPA funds.
I think that's a great request and we can definitely follow through on that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Actually, Councilor Whipple, Wayne Parker wanted to say something.
Well, I would never want to shortcut.
Okay, go ahead, Councilor Whipple.
Let's have Councilor Whipple speak first.
Well, I just wanted to thank Councilor Fillmore for asking those questions because I feel like throughout the presentation, we've heard we can use ARPA for this and this and this and this. And it just makes me afraid that we've spent the ARPA money 5 times over. And so that's why I really want to see these numbers, because I know my kids, if they get a $10 bill, then they've already spent $30 in their minds. So I want to be sure that we're careful on this.
The only thing I'd mention, again, we are meeting with the council's ARPA committee on Monday. We've been working from attempting to work much like the council has on a criteria principle-based approach to allocating those funds. And we're anxious to compare notes on Monday and look at kind of what we've come up with compared to what the council's come up with. We haven't reached any foregone conclusions other than one that I think we've felt pretty strongly about, and that is we'd like to find ways to maximize what I would call the legacy opportunity of the ARPA funds, as opposed to finding ways to balance operating budgets, which then will require to come back next year with city resources to do that, to really think about what can we do as a lasting legacy in the community as the result of these ARPA funds being available. And so we're happy to have that dialogue. And as John suggested, we're happy to walk through that capital improvement expenditures and talk about sources and uses. We're happy to provide that as well. But we haven't made any foregone conclusions yet about exactly what's going to happen with ARPA.
Any other questions? Well, yes. Councilman Kay.
This is for Dave too. There's a lot of airport stuff on here, which I totally expect. Now I know they had stuff with the FAA and we were doing like a study of the airport to see what we needed. Have we finished that study yet? And are these recommendations based on that study?
I think the study that you're talking about is the consolidated fee schedule. That study, that's part of the budget that John.
Perfect. Thank you.
Any additional questions for John? Okay, great.
We look forward to many more discussions in the next month or so. So thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now open up this item for public comment. Looks like we've got somebody online. If you're interested in making a public comment, please let us know. Any public comment in the chamber? Go ahead, Melanie McCord. Melanie, it looks like you're still muted.
Yes, I'm here. I know, but I can't. Your system is a little bit slow. You ask for a comment, but then you have to wait for the prompt from
No
your
worries,
system.
Melanie.
there's
We'll
always
wait for you anytime.
You're right. I have 4 recommendations. You need more than 2 additional police officers. You need 4. And then you need to create a public safety task force that starts. This is an ad hoc committee that the council forms to look at how to slowly increase the police department's funding so that we can get up to the national standards of staffing. 2, you need to create in this year's budget a separate airport department. And I don't know what that would take, other than some probably legislative staff to draft that ordinance, but that needs to be done this year. 3rd thing, I think you ought to cut the mayor's office budget. I think that there's way too many public relations and public outreach personnel making videos that don't really have much return on investment. And the 4th, you got to take the money that you've allocated for 2 roundabouts on Slate Canyon Drive and spend it instead on increasing the zoning enforcement staff. Bill commented during work session that the neighborhood has been clamoring for roundabouts on Slate Canyon Drive. That's not true. What the neighborhood has been clamoring for is enforcement. There are more problems than just speed on Slate Canyon. There is parking, there is over occupancy, there is violations of the rental dwelling license. You've got a lot of problems up there, and the roundabouts are going to be 2 very expensive speed bumps that are not going to address the larger problems that are causing the traffic problems on Slate Canyon. So those are the 4 things. 2 more police officers, an ad hoc committee, separate airport department, cutting the mayor's office budget, and taking the money for the roundabouts and putting it into zoning enforcement staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Melanie. Step right up. Let us know who you are again. Sorry, we got to keep asking you to say your name.
Jack Pate, Provo City. Just 3 items I noticed. First of all, on that airport, I saw 5 or 6 professionals being added. Do they all have to be different people? Can any of it be outsourced to private companies? I see that as an ongoing expense that's probably unnecessary. I just can't imagine that many bureaucrats being added, even though the FAA, the aircraft control people, want those functions. Do they need full-time people for all those? Because those are going to cost you a fortune.
Jack,
one
if I
comment.
might, let me just answer that question in part if I can. We'll give a little extra time.
Pardon?
Go
ahead and answer it later if you want.
Those positions are FAA requirements.
I understand that, but do they all have to be separate individuals, full-time employees for their airport the size of ours? Okay. Government strikes again. Okay. There was, okay, I agree. I think the comment was already made. One-time money should be spent on capital and not on capital investments, not on ongoing expenses. I looked at that 80 million rise and then saw where it was coming from. Thought, where's it going to come from next year? That's always a concern. But what I came to talk about really was that roundabouts issue. I live in the neighborhood right below Slate Canyon Drive. Okay. And I'm on Slate Canyon Drive very, very frequently, walking, hiking up to the mountain or whatever. But if you put roundabouts on that street, you're going to drive the traffic into my neighborhood. Slate Canyon Drive was built years ago to make sure that the traffic did not come down to 9th East, that it had an access out. If you put roundabouts in there, you're going to slow traffic, and everybody avoids stop signs. Everybody thinks through their route. Maybe not everybody. My wife follows the driver in front of her. Okay. I drive like otherwise. Okay. But those roundabouts are going to push traffic down into our neighborhood, and that neighborhood, the reason that has so much traffic problems, is, I'm sure, a question of traffic management that experts are going to talk to you about. And yes, roundabouts may slow traffic down, but it's going to push it into our neighborhood. And I don't think that's the solution. And again, I think zoning is the problem up there too. Those are being used as multi-unit apartments, and that's not what they're zoned for.
Thank you for those comments. Any additional public comment? All right, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Bring it back to the council for any additional discussion. Councilor Handley?
Yeah, I just would like some advice maybe from staff a little bit about what would be the most helpful thing for us to do over the next 2 weeks to expedite this process so that we're fully prepared for our next meeting. Obviously we want to read through this, but is there anything in particular? Is it that we should focus on? I'm sort of asking out loud for myself, but maybe for the rest of the council to help us make the best use of that time so that we hit the ground running on the 17th.
Councilor Hanlon, let me take one stab at that, and then John probably has other comments. Just a reminder that the process is a little bit interesting and a little bit counterintuitive about how the budget works. You've been presented today with the tentative budget. The next step for you to take is for you to tentatively adopt the tentative budget. What that actually means is for you to declare, this is officially, we have received the budget. This is the budget that we will officially consider whether to approve or not. In essence, in my view, I like to think of it as it's you signaling to the public, okay, we've made any technical corrections or changed any errors that we know need to be made before you even look at what we're going to consider. But then because you're still going to hold 2 more public hearings after that before you actually adopt the budget, right? So at this point, you have the mayor's tentative budget. Your job now is to get ready to tentatively adopt it, but tentatively adopting it is not approving it. It's essentially saying, it's putting your stamp on it to say, this is now what we're going to consider in the next 2 hearings. So if you have changes that you absolutely certainly know need to be changed, or if you see errors, or if there are things that you're like, we're not even going to consider doing that, so let's change it right now so the public doesn't even give us public comment about that thing that we're not even going to consider. Those are the kinds of things that need to happen in the next couple of weeks. But then everything else can, at least theoretically, depending on your preferences and inclinations, wait until after that, because it's the next 2 public hearings when you're really focused on receiving public comment about that tentative budget before you adopt it. I don't know if that made it more or less confusing, but it's a somewhat confusing process. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Councilor Ellsworth.
Just to clarify, I know we've talked about this every year, but when we tentatively adopt the tentative budget, it's kind of like we're creating a draft baseline, and we all assume that it can be molded and shaped from there. It's just kind of a starting point, basically. And it's not an official adoption. It's a agreement of kind of a baseline for a draft where we've tentatively adopted a draft.
That is correct. I guess the one thing I had to clarify with respect to that is, because this came up earlier, is if you were to decide to go to truth and taxation hearings, then from the period from July 1st until you hold the truth and taxation hearings in August and actually adopt a final budget, the state statute gives you the opportunity to choose between operating during that 2-month period on the tentative budget or on last year's budget. So even though it is a draft, it's a draft that could theoretically be used for 2 months if you went through the truth and taxation process.
So thank you, Mr. Jones. That you're always very clear, even in obscure legal dark woods that I never go into. I can see more clearly whenever you speak. So I guess my thought is to the council as a whole, it sounds to me like the most important thing we can do between now and next time we meet is figure out as you read over this if it meets that baseline requirement, that there's something workable here that you are willing to tentatively adopt going forward after that. So that's helpful for me. And I appreciate Mr. Fillmore's questioning too about that $80 million gap. I mean, I think that's really where I want to be able to focus. So I do appreciate any help Mr. Borgett can provide with that. That's and just echoing what was said by Councilor Whipple as well. I just want to make sure I have it clear in my head who are all the people hoping to get a piece of the ARPA money and how much, and how much of it is realistic and how much of it is going to have to require some tough decisions.
Can we grab you after? All right, any additional discussion? I think I'd just like more clarity on everything happening at the airport, revenues and costs, and just a little more clarity on those FTE. And go ahead, Councilor McKay.
About what you're saying, the airport, could we get that report that you got from the FAA? Thank you.
As staff, we can work on that and pull a report together on the airport, the revenues, the expenditures this year over difference of last year. Circulate that quickly.
Thank you. Okay, we now have an implied motion on a resolution authorizing Provo City to enter into an interlocal agreement with the Redevelopment Agency of Provo City, authorizing the use of tax increment in the Freedom Plaza Community Development Project area. David Walter, is he here? There he is. Our RDA director will be presenting.
Mr. Chair, members of the council, good evening. This item, and there's a companion item for the redevelopment agency as well, probably requires a little bit of background explanation. So in 2009, the city and the redevelopment agency and the county entered into an agreement, interlocal agreement, to provide for parking for the proposed convention center. And there were some give and take back and forth. The agency helped to acquire some property, transferred it to the county, with the understanding that one day there would be parking provided. And so for various reasons, some of the proposed plans to provide that parking fell through. And in 2017, the county sued the agency and the city for, in their opinion, not providing the parking. So there was a little bit of a disagreement between us as to how that parking was being provided at the time. In 2018, there was a settlement agreement that was adopted by the county and the agency, and the parking was going to be provided through the parking garage that's being constructed immediately behind the Hilton Hotel as part of the PEG development project. So we had an interlocal agreement where the agency would acquire a portion of the city's tax increment on the increase in the project area. Unfortunately, one of the things that happened was that there was a stipulation within the settlement agreement that the city would give up 100% of its tax increment for that project. And that was missed the first time around. So the item is asking us to adopt an amended, this was caught by one of the county attorneys, and they're asking us to adopt a new interlocal agreement where 100% of the city's tax increment would then go to providing parking for this project. So this parking structure is going to be providing parking for the convention center, the Hilton Hotel, as well as the MTech project right there, and PEG's office project. So, and Mr. Bancroft's parking as well. So quite a mixed bag of parking. The county, through this process, will get 350 spaces. I believe it's 6 times a year for different conventions that are being held at the convention center. So, and then additional parking will be provided in the downtown for members of the public to use. So
Any questions? Go ahead, Counselor McKay.
Okay, I'm confused where this tax increment is going into who.
The tax increment is going to help offset the cost of providing the parking.
To who?
PEG development. So
To PEG.
PEG picked up the cost of constructing the parking,
Okay.
which equated to roughly $20,000 a space. It's 385 spaces, I believe.
So how many years do we give them?
12.
12 years.
Oh, 15, I'm sorry.
So 15 years of the increase.
15 years of the increase. The city will still get the base from the project area, as is typical in all these transactions. We will maintain, the city will maintain the tax base it currently gets, but it's
Right.
the increase, the increment.
Okay. And what about, you say that we're providing so many spots, when they have conventions. How do you regulate that in a?
That's all going to be on the county. They'll work that out with PEG.
Okay.
Counselor Ellsworth.
I'm trying to remember, is it this project where the city did like a pre-lease agreement with the developer? Can you tell us about that?
Certainly. So in order to help PEG reach a 60% threshold of pre-leasing for the building, we agreed to lease the space. The only source of revenue that PEG has for that is the tax increment. But in that case, the tax increment is still going to PEG and it is still offsetting the cost of providing that. It's just also, in this case, they're going to get the tax increment and they will count it towards, it's just, the lease portion was a formality for us to reach that 60, for PEG, I'm sorry, to reach that 60% threshold. So their construction lender would release the funding to them to start the construction of the project. And it's our belief that once someone, typically when we talk to people, they are looking to move into a building right away as opposed to a 2.5 year timeline. And so now that the building is under construction, businesses can more easily visualize themselves being in there as opposed to seeing a vacant lot and some pictures and a floor plan. So PEG has agreed to release us from our obligation once they get someone to backfill that space. But in any event, they only get call on the tax increment once.
Okay, but we're still pre-leasing it. We haven't been relieved of that obligation.
So far, no, we have not.
Yeah, okay. It's an unusual, to me, it seems like an unusual incentive or a deal, but yeah, there's a number of deals going down.
Additional questions? Okay, Counselor Fillmore, go ahead.
I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. My recollection is on this pre-lease commitment we made to facilitate PEG's bank financing.
Correct.
That is a net zero arrangement for the city. And
Yes.
we're not writing checks.
We are not writing checks.
Right. Secondly, this 100%, was this just a typo that was caught the second time around?
Yeah, when I prepared the initial interlocal agreement, I was remembering some previous direction from council and I didn't put in. Typically, we had done up to 95% prior to the last 3 or 4 years. We'd been going down to like 75 or 70. And I had missed the fact that the county had stipulated that we put in 100% of the tax increment.
Right. So this isn't a renegotiation. It's just
No.
we're simply saying what we agreed to originally.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not another bite at the apple for the county, so.
Okay.
Okay, we'll now go ahead and open up this item for public comment. Any public comment from inside the chamber here? And we don't appear to have anyone online. So we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the council for discussion. Any discussion on this item? Councilor Shipley.
Sorry, I should have asked this earlier.
So you mentioned that the parking arrangement just has to be handled between the county and PEG or the managers of this parking structure.
Correct.
Didn't the city give the property and then also enter the interlocal to basically provide for some public parking for city residents beyond just convention parking? Or has this always just been to satisfy only convention and never have a city element?
This is not intended only for the convention center. There will be probably days where the convention center takes all 350 spaces that they're entitled to and more, but how they handle that additional, like the 350 first patron that comes to the convention will probably have to end up paying something for parking, but you know, that is a convention that they will have to work out with PEG as they go through this. So in a similar vein as what we've done with other parking structures in the downtown, the parking structure is going to be managed and operated by PEG as well as maintained. So similar to the Marriott Hotel.
Or like Zion's and Wells Fargo.
Zion's and Wells Fargo.
Yeah,
correct.
and that's, I guess, what worries me. Because one of the things that we had the new parking director, or we had thought about the new parking director thinking about were these lease agreements, right? And trying to maintain more spaces for public use in some of these parking lots that really don't have a public use element to them. They're just restricted just enough not to really allow for public, even though the city gave something valuable up for it. That's why I mentioned if we gave up property and we had business owners, for example, downtown that used to use that lot as a parking, as a parking lot, and now there's a structure on it. I just hope that there would be some availability, and some opportunity for the city to lend influence on how those spots could be utilized potentially when it's not being used by the convention center.
PEG has been a pretty active participant in the downtown. They've been pretty active in meeting with not only us, but different members of the city, including the Covey Performing Arts Center, the Convention Center, several of the hotels, and to try to figure out how best to do that. And so they understand that it is an issue and it is still a concern that we have to stay on top of.
Okay.
Just to clarify, if I might, Dave.
Sure.
So you mentioned like six times a year, there'd be a major convention and they'd have total control of the parking, right?
No, they get 350 spaces.
Okay, 350 spaces for
Correct.
those convention times.
Right.
But otherwise it's available to the public.
Yes.
And is that for paid parking?
I don't think that that's been entirely worked out yet, whether it's going to be paid parking or not.
To the extent it is paid parking, you're saying that's totally between the county and PEG?
It'll be primarily PEG.
Okay, and so it's an expense offset, it's a revenue maker potentially for PEG.
Yes.
We don't have any say in that in terms of trying to create free public parking downtown.
Obviously, we have some sort of influence with them, and they've worked very closely with us to make it happen. We still have some additional negotiating to do over the expansion that they're proposing on the rest of the former Sears lot that's right there between the structure and the Smiths building. So
I guess I would just say that given the fact that the city really bent over backwards to help PEG
yes,
get going and help them get their bank financing, I hope they give some very serious consideration to opening up that parking at least certain hours as free parking to the public.
So the nice thing about this is that much of the parking is going to be available after, so I believe 5 or 6 o'clock, when a lot of the office residents that will be primarily office tenants, I guess I should say, not residents, office tenants of the structure will be gone. So that parking will be available.
Is this something that you expect will resolve itself within this year? That is the overall parking arrangement in terms of accessibility, use, and fees and so on?
I would expect so, yes, sir.
So we could expect a report back in some reasonable period of time as to how that's come together?
Certainly.
Great. Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Councilor McKay.
How many spots are there altogether in this garage? You don't know?
Drawing a blank. Off the top of my head, I want to say it's 4 something, maybe
Okay.
425, but don't hold me
And
to
this
that.
is also the parking for the office structure that
Yes.
PEG is building, so that they're going to take significant spots regardless.
Yes.
Any additional questions or comments? Thank you, David. It appears we do have someone who didn't make public comment but was hoping to. Melanie McCord, I'll open up public comment if that's what you're here for. I'll open it back up for you to make your comment.
Hi. I am aware that you get briefings that I don't hear. But the questions that were asked today by the council of Dave Walters indicate to me that this council has not received sufficient briefing about the kind of problems that we've had with PEG, or the kind of benefits that PEG is getting, and that's not okay with me. And I'm not happy with Dave Walters. I mean, I'm not happy enough to the point of suggesting that maybe we put out a request for a new redevelopment agency director. But I am absolutely adamant about the fact that this council needs a complete briefing from him on all of the benefits from every project that PEG has done. We are giving away a tremendous amount of public funding for a developer who is virtually assured success in the locations he's been given. And I'm not happy with the council's job of being the redevelopment agency and giving the oversight that they need on this. I think you need to get Dave Walters in there and make him give you a complete briefing. Other than that, I have several other suggestions of some things you could do, but I won't make them now.
Thank you, Melanie. Okay. Would any council member like to continue this item?
You're asking, this isn't a
Oh.
planning commission item, so the
We can't
rule doesn't
continue.
apply to that one.
Okay.
But certainly a motion can be made. I would just comment, in case anyone's not aware, that we're essentially contractually bound to approve this resolution. This arises out of the fact that the county sued the city for breach of contract regarding providing parking for the convention center. And the proposal that this agreement implements is part of the settlement agreement that resolved that litigation.
Well, that changes things. Councilor Shipley.
Yeah, I to Ms. McCord's point and to, some of the questions that we've had today, I think it would be helpful at a future work meeting to discuss, again, to kind of go back to this discussion that we had in terms of parking. At least this is a curiosity point for me that I think would be helpful to go back to, what did the city give in these parking arrangements? What's the influence that we have? What are the lease agreements like now going forward? What kind of influence do we have on them to provide public parking going forward for our citizens after we have given something of value? So although this might be contractual, I think it still does leave room in almost all of these circumstances for the city to continue to lend influence, on these parking lots. And I think we have requested the parking director to come brief us pretty soon. So maybe that's part of that. But that's the aspect of this that I'm most interested in is are we getting value, from these parking lots beyond what we have to contractually do?
And
Councilor Fillmore.
Yes,
Oh.
I wanted to ask Mr. Parker a question, if I might. We have talked on occasion about the city's downtown parking needs. And, part of the logic for the PEG development and helping them out with their bank loan and everything else was to increase downtown parking for the public.
Yes.
And of course, part of that larger problem or opportunity has to do with the East Block City Center and how that's redeveloped and all that. What is the administration's current thinking in terms of downtown parking needs and how the PEG development, as well as other things, will be addressing that need?
Well, I was just, as we were talking, I was looking through a PowerPoint presentation I did for the council back in 2018 that summarized the deal with PEG and the county and the city and the RDA. And it's been clear from the get-go that number one, as Mr. Walter indicated, we were attempting to settle litigation with the county. We thought we were right, so they thought they were right. And the benefit of the settlement agreement is to figure out not necessarily who's right, but what are we going to do about this today? And I think it's important to remember that there is a second parking structure mirror image of this current office building and parking structure directly across the street to the north on Second 200 North between Freedom and First West. The parking structure, the two parking structures combined include 1,200 parking stalls. And again, 175 of those in each facility. So that gets to 350 Mr. Walter was talking about in terms of supplement to the county convention center parking. There is a public parking component, but it tends to be much more along the lines, as he suggested, that the office tenants will be gone in the evening. And so when activity is bustling downtown on a Friday night, all of those parking stalls become available to the public. And so again, every time we do one of these, it's a part of the solution to the problem. None of them is the total solution to the problem. We're as we're working with Mr. Thorpe, our parking program manager, we're having conversations about, for example, doing a test run on paid on-street parking, but maybe do that test run on 800 North south of the BYU campus, where the risks aren't quite as high and the opportunity to prove the concept maybe works better. And assuming we get, heavy use of the app and the ability to charge different parking rates at different times of day, depending on the demand for parking at the time, we'd love to try that out before we start talking about doing some kind of on-street paid parking in downtown. Yeah, it's a combination of factors that's going to resolve the issue over time. But these two parking structures, again, one that will be open in the next few months, and another one that's probably 2 to 3 years out, will address at least the needs relative to the new development that's occurred in this area and the Utah Valley Convention Center. So yeah, I guess, Mr. Fillmore, what I'm saying is it's going to be a more comprehensive approach. We do have some good guidelines in our Kimley Horn, strategic parking plan for downtown, and we're following that outline with how we've done these deals on these parking structures. Do we have more to do? Yes, we obviously have more to do. The advent, one thing that's occurred in the interim is the completion of the Provo City Center Temple. And while they provided a fair amount of their own parking, it still spills out into on-street parking and into additional parking structures. We have the county parking complex that has a fair amount of public parking that's seldom utilized. And so again, more, better wayfinding, better strategic direction, more common wayfinding. So when you pull up to a parking garage gate, you know exactly what you're getting into. That's all part of that strategic plan as well. So lots of components to resolving the downtown parking issues, but I feel confident we're on the right track.
Yeah. Well, it's all incremental progress, and certainly we all wanted that PEG development to catalyze commercial development downtown. So
yeah, yeah, it's a significant step forward. And I know you've heard, as we've been talking recently, about the Provo Advantage, from the standpoint of economic vitality. I sat in a meeting on Friday morning with Brandon Fugel, who reiterated to me that, that what the PEG development process really continues is this momentum about Provo being Utah Valley's central business district, not just for Provo, but for the entire valley. And we offer things here that can't be offered other places. And the Class A office space that's coming into downtown suggests that we're starting to get there. So again, I think lots of positive messages here, but again, the parking development in downtown is strategic and thoughtful, and we're following the strategic plan.
Thank you.
Chair Hoban.
Mr. Jones.
If I could just make a follow-up to my previous comment, the comment that this about giving the legal background or context for this particular proposal was in no way meant to suggest that the council shouldn't have all its questions answered. So, I mean, I guess what I would say is, if there's some discomfort about not feeling like all that context is understood, and we need to step back and do a briefing on what the litigation was about, what the result of the litigation was, what the settlement agreement said, and how this agreement comports with the settlement agreement. We're happy to do all of those things. You certainly should feel like you're informed. I was not attempting to say, do this whether you think you should or not.
And we'd be, yeah. And again, I think Brian's raised a really important point. The decision to do this was made in 2018. We're just finalizing the document today, but I would love, we can certainly send out the PowerPoint, which hits all the deal points that were involved in the settlement agreement. We'd be happy to send you a link to the meeting in which we presented the deal points, and you could see what the city council 4 years ago, kind of how that discussion went, so you can get some context. But yeah, we'd be happy to give you all the background that would be helpful in trying to resolve your concerns.
Just to be clear with all of us, there may be some of the newer members of the council who don't have this background that Wayne and Brian are alluding to. But today, all we're doing is approving that correction, 5%.
Yeah, I was looking, for example, in the parking agreement terms for Provo City. We extended the CDA. We agreed to some impact fee concessions, and as it turned out, we didn't do much in that regard. That we would give 100% of the city's tax increment in the expanded area for parking. The county pledged 75% of their tax increment. The differential was important to them. It was symbolic. And yet, when we did the original agreement, as David indicated, we used our standard form, which is at the time was 95% of our tax increment. And so all we're really talking about today is closing that gap between 95 and 100%. So it's a relatively small increment. And we enforced temporary surface parking. We built temporary surface parking in the interim for the convention center, and we agreed to provide traffic, parking enforcement there, which we did. And we supported PEG's efforts to get their project entitled, which we did. So we've kept all of our elements of that settlement agreement, again, with the correction today of this interlocal agreement that gets us from 95 to 100.
Mr. Chair, I move the question.
Well, I think we're ready to call a vote, so I don't think we really even need the motion. But thank you. All right. If there's no further discussion, we will call for a vote on the implied motion. Councilor Whipple?
Yes.
Councilor Shipley?
Yes.
Councilor McKay?
Yes.
I will vote yes. Chair Hoban? Vice Chair Hanley?
Yes.
Councilor Ellsworth?
Yes.
Councilor Fillmore?
Yes.
That is unanimous. At this time, we will, if there's no objection, we will now adjourn the Provo Municipal Council meeting and convene as the Provo City Stormwater Service District by unanimous consent. I'm going to take, we're going to go ahead and take a 10-minute break because I need to use the restroom, all right? So we'll go ahead and take a 10-minute break. We'll be back at, quarter to 8. Thank you. Taking a break? staff, go ahead and let me know when you're ready. Heidi's giving the thumbs up. Okay. All right. We are convening as the Provo City Stormwater Service District. Our agenda item is a presentation of the proposed tentative budget. And this will be by John Borgett. Is he still around? Oh, Kelsey. All right, great.
Thank you. John Borgett asked if I would present the proposed tentative budget for the Stormwater Service District. Ellen, thanks for pulling it up on the screen. So this is actually part of the Provo City. It's not part of the Provo City budget, but it's in the Provo City budget book in the appendix. So you can access it on page 145. It's a pretty straightforward budget. Stormwater protects the streets and properties from flooding, and this budget helps Public Works with those operations and capital projects related to stormwater. So the expense budget is $6.3 million for stormwater this year. And that's really all I have. Any questions? Yeah, that's about it. It's pretty straightforward.
I'll ask a question.
Yeah.
We should have you present more often. That John guy, he goes on forever.
This is very small compared to the city budget, so.
Councilor Shipley.
So last year was, I guess this year was a pretty big drawdown. I assume that's just capital projects, but is there a target for the fund balance that we want? I get the fund balance for our general fund, and then when I start looking at these different enterprise funds and things like that, I'm not as sure
right
why we have the fund balances we do.
I know exactly where to look for that answer. In the financial policies, we have a section on enterprise funds, and well, actually, I don't know if it would apply to stormwater since it's not part of the city. Dave? No.
There's not a specific policy, John, in the fund administration. General.
Can you come to the mic so we can record that?
Careful.
There's not a specific written policy on utility fund balances. John and the administration has given us some general direction to try to get a 20 to 25%, which is it's the same goal that the general fund has. And so in general, that's what we try to achieve with utility funds.
If stormwater needed to bond at some point, would they bond as a separate entity, or would they bond as part of?
They would bond. In fact, we were talking at the.
So it is important to have that fund just from a bonding standpoint too. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I thought there was, no? Okay. Thank you, Kelsey. We will now go ahead and open up this item for public comment. Anyone in the chamber? Nobody's left. Okay. Online, it appears that we are clear. So we'll go ahead and close public comment and bring it back to the council for any discussion. All right, we'll go ahead and close discussion, and we will discussion only. Okay. If there's no objection, we will now adjourn the Provo City Stormwater Service District and convene as the Redevelopment Agency of Provo by unanimous consent, and we will turn it over to Chair Ellsworth.
Thank you. We're looking at item number 10 with the Redevelopment Agency Governing Board and acting as the RDA board tonight. We have a resolution authorizing the RDA of Provo City to enter into an interlocal agreement with Provo City, authorizing the use of tax increment in the Freedom Plaza Community Development Project area. And I think this will be presented by Mr. Wayne Parker.
Thank you. I want to excuse David Walter, who was trying to get on the road on a trip to Colorado this evening. So, but this is the companion piece to the item we just discussed in the city council agenda that moves from 95% to 100% of tax increment associated with the Freedom Plaza community development area, which now comports with our settlement agreement with the county. And so we're just asking the agency to now approve the same agreement that we just approved in the city council agenda. So happy to answer any questions you have.
All right. Well, if there's any members of the public that would like to give comment for this item, please call in now. Are there any questions for Mr. Parker from the RDA board?
Doesn't look like anyone's online.
Are there any questions from the board? If not, we'll open the item for public comment. All right, no one is here in the council chambers. Apparently, there's no one online. Fair enough. We will close the public comment period. Is there any board discussion on this item?
Can I just clarify that this is a retroactive entering of this agreement? This makes it, the action item makes it sound like we're newly entering.
Right. This is This is a replacement agreement. It supplants the prior one. And there has been no collection of tax increment yet because the project's not fully complete. And so this just, it starts the clock ticking.
Okay. Thank you.
Excellent. Any board discussion on this item? Okay. Well, assuming there's no substitute motions, we will call for a vote on the implied motion. Councilor McKay. Oh, I'm sorry. Board Member McKay.
Yes.
Board Member Shipley.
Yes.
Board Member Fillmore.
Yes, ma'am.
Board Member Handley.
Yes.
Board Member Hoban.
Yes.
Vice Chair Whipple.
Yes.
And I, Chair Ellsworth, vote yes. So the vote is unanimous. All in favor. All right, moving to the next agenda item with the Redevelopment Agency Governing Board. We will have a presentation on the proposed tentative budget for the RDA. And I assume this will be presented by Kelsey Zarbach, right?
Yeah.
Okay, take it away.
Yes, I'm Kelsey Zarbach presenting the proposed tentative budget for the Provo Redevelopment Agency. Again, no action is required tonight on this. It's in the appendix of the Provo City budget for fiscal year 2023 on page 146. And so just so you're aware, the RDA is comprised of two funds. We have the tax increment fund and the new development fund. And so the combined expense budget for those two funds is $1.2 million. And the majority of that is from the tax increment fund, which is about $1.2 million of that amount, which, yeah, basically the new development fund is only $34,300 of the budget. So anyway, any questions on that?
Sorry, just a formatting question.
Yeah.
Is there a reason that we don't carry a fund balance total across this?
I'm not sure. I mean, my first thought is maybe it was just never added to the chart and we can add that to our tables in the future.
That'd be great.
I can look into that for sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Board Member Hoban? No. Okay. All right. Well, it looks like we don't have any other questions. Thank you. If there's any members of the public that would like to give comment, we will open this item for public comment. There is no one here in the council chambers.
Nobody online.
And there's nobody online. Darn it. Okay, this was for presentation only. If there's not any discussion, it's not required. There's no action needed. Okay. Well, then that concludes the business of the RDA. If there's no objection, we will now adjourn the Redevelopment Agency of Provo Governing Board by unanimous consent. Board members, you will want to turn on your mic and speak up if you object. I'll just add one comment. Today in our work meeting, I inadvertently asked some questions that I didn't mean to be accusatory or in any way an attack on the city's PIO, who I believe does a terrific job. So I had some misinformation or some outdated information, and it was my mistake in believing that that was current information. So I sincerely apologize. And that concludes our business.